Next, on your Joy Change Speakers Series 2, Impacting Influence for a Better Ghana. Our next speaker is Brigitte Dzogbenuku, who was the presidential candidate for the promising Third Force, PPP, in 2020. That's the elections. She's the founder and executive director of Mentoring Women Ghana, which runs mentoring programs to empower young girls and women into leadership to make a difference in their respective communities. She was the general manager of Aviation Social Center for 12 years. She founded a recreational facilities management company, which was in charge of running the Barclays Clubhouse until 2015. She also served in an NYU Wagner Institute program where she coached participants of the Ghanaian Women's Social Leadership Program in 2014 and 2015. Of course, some of you have been made to relate to her first in November 1990 as Miss Ghana. She's a businesswoman, entrepreneur, and socio-political activist. Thank you so very much for making time to join us.
Thank you, Samson, for having me.
Shall we hear you?
Okay. I'm going to speak on the need for constitutional amendment. And as you mentioned, this is the view, my view, and indeed the view of the party that I represented in 2020. So I'd like to thank you, Samson, Joy FM, and Newsfile for this opportunity to make the statement on national issues and my attempt to make some proposals with respect to good governance and how we can reap rapidly the benefits of a democratic society. I think that the previous speaker before me, HKP, has mentioned a lot of the things, but I would like to add to them as well. So we will begin with our constitution. Recently, we were patting ourselves on the back and on marking 30 years of the adoption of the 1992 Constitution as the basis of our current democracy and the Fourth Republic. 30 years, well done to us indeed. But such an agreement between the governors and the people would and should normally reflect well-negotiated terms that are fair to both the people and their government, equal or almost equal partners in national development. However, a closer look at the current constitution presents a worrisome spectacle of a predatory relationship between the government and the people. Our constitution is lopsided, and the power scale is so much tilted in favor of the governors or elected officials, or as we call them today, the political elite. As a result, we, the people, have not enjoyed the full benefits of a democratic state in the terms of the adequate provision of social services, water, electricity, basic roads in our communities. I live in Teshnungwa Estate, residential areas, a nationwide, well-functioning public education system and health systems, and well-resourced district assemblies, effective systems of accountability, an efficient body of public service officers who treat citizens with respect and dignity, safe interregional motorways, decent housing, jobs for the youth, political accountability, reduction in corruption, stability of the currency, and overall, a good standard of living. There are indicators for measuring the success or otherwise of a democracy, and not a mere periodic conduct of elections and the successful, peaceful transition or transfer of power from one administration to the other. Our 30-year democratic experience has rather registered massive levels of youth unemployment, excessive and unfettered executive powers, a compromised parliament, abuse of power, unbridled corruption, waste of Ghana's resources, nepotism, mediocrity, mismanagement of the economy, and a constant failure of leadership. In fact, the current constitution, in my view, has created a situation where the winning political parties have treated the republic as a colony to be conquered, and its resources taken for the welfare of the few privileged members, the political elite of the party in power, depriving the significant majority of Ghanaians the dividends of a well-constituted democratic state. I think HKP said it, that the stability of the country is threatened by the youth, of course, by this situation and an intensely exclusionary political system where citizenship is no longer a requirement or enough requirement to have access to the state resources and to partake in the sharing of the national cake. A citizen must necessarily, as HKP said, require membership of the party in power to benefit from the welfare state. We risk losing the continued support and defense of this constitution has enjoyed from the people. And in fact, people are getting disgruntled if we do not take steps to correct some of the defects identified within the present constitution. So some important areas for constitutional amendments where there are defects and we must amend would include these 5 fundamental changes that need immediate attention to guarantee some modicum of progress if Ghana is to gain or get any dividends in our last democratic experiment. The 5 areas are as follows. Return power to the people for all Ghanaians to directly elect their district, municipal, and metropolitan chief executives without any interference from the president and council government appointees into the district assembly. To prohibit members of parliament from being appointed as ministers of state, or else MPs must resign from parliament after their ministerial appointment. 3, strengthen the office of Attorney General by separating it from the Ministry of Justice. 4, introduce a public declaration of assets regime. And 5, clarify the eligibility of Ghanaians in the diaspora to hold public office. Let's start with the MMDCEs, election of the MMDCEs. It would be superfluous to recount the benefits of electing directly and by universal adult suffrage all our metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives, as well as all the members of the district assemblies. In addition, the concept of governmental appointees should be completely abolished. The matter has been flogged over the years with elected governments demonstrating a lack of political will to empower the districts to elect their chief executive officers who are true agents of development. As someone said, no one wants to preside over their own demise. So rather, the members of parliament whose job is to pass legislation have arrogated to themselves the role of development agents with no constitutionally allocated resources. And indeed, the people have started to believe that it's the MP who will develop their districts. The result is that MPs have resorted to all kinds of unorthodox ways and policy violations to attempt to bring some piecemeal development to the people. For example, the office of the chief executive has become a trophy to be won and hijacked by elected political parties to reward party members who could neither become members of parliament nor ministers of state. The practice has been for political party leaders to travel around the country to vet and establish the loyalty of DCE applicants to the party in power. In other words, loyalty to the party is the main consideration for appointment as district chief executive. The election of district chief executives is long overdue because it remains a democratic deficit and a major impediment in the development of the various smaller units that constitute Ghana. It will ensure that all resources allocated by the Constitution through the District Assembly Common Fund are demanded by the elected officers and same sent to the district promptly for local development. As it stands now, I think the District Assembly Common Fund is almost 3/4 in arrears. It will ensure local accountability, elimination of corruption, and rapid development. If citizens are capable of electing the president, who is high above them, and members of parliament, they should be credited with the wisdom to decide who governs them at the local level, surely. Denying the good people of Ghana their power following the aborted referendum, whether or not MMDCEs should be elected on partisan basis, must be viewed as a coup d'etat indeed against the people of Ghana by the political class. The question of a partisan election of MMDCEs or otherwise can only be answered by Ghanaians at a referendum, so no one can deny Ghanaians that opportunity under the pretext of a lack of consensus. As it was said by the previous speaker, Ghanaians have indeed become distrustful of political parties anyway. So they have decided that they do not want to do this on partisan basis. And if we want to test the veracity of that, maybe we should put it to a referendum. How else can we know the position of Ghanaians on this matter other than through a referendum? No president or any other member of the political class should use the partisan debate to conveniently deflect the urgent need for all DCEs plus all assembly members to be elected freely and by universal adult suffrage. For the avoidance of doubt, we can actually elect our chief executives without going for a referendum. All that we need to do now is for Parliament to amend Articles 242D, which deals with the appointments of 1/3 of assembly members, and Articles 2431 and 2433, which deals with the appointments or, in quotes, disappointment of the chief executive. Making a referendum on Article 55(3), which prohibits political parties from local government elections, a precondition for electing MMDCEs, is mischievous and a calculated attempt to postpone once again a very constitutional amendment. So at this point, government should choose patriotism over partisanship and allow people of Ghana to elect their own DCEs. If we want Ghanaians to allow political parties to participate in the local elections, the referendum will show for that. This major step in amending Article 243 will be the least the political holders can do to demonstrate a commitment to ceding power to the people. The second one is to separate MPs from ministers by amending Article 78(1). We advocate strongly the concept of strict separation of powers because the current arrangement, where the 1992 Constitution by design bequeathed Parliament to the executive, has hampered Parliament's ability to exact accountability from the executive on behalf of the people. Article 78(1) mandates the President to appoint majority of his ministers from Parliament. This means that more than half of all the ministers and deputy ministers must be members of Parliament. So every member of Parliament indeed looks up to the President for a ministerial appointment, and therefore their immediate priority is not to check the government against malfeasance, but to catch the eye of the President for appointment. Or look the other way, where as it may apply. This has resulted in a compromised Parliament, which is obviously ineffective in scrutinizing the activities of the executives to guarantee the judicious application of the nation's resources. For example, apart from ministerial appointments, some members of parliament are appointed as chair and members of board of directors of state-owned enterprises, corporations, and other institutions, thereby compromising the supervisory role of parliament, public accounts committee, cases of corruption. These are the same people sitting in there. These appointments to buy loyalty blur the lines of checks and balances. The proposal is that if a member of parliament is appointed as a minister or accepts any other appointment by the president, then he or she must resign his seat before taking up the appointment. People seeking to become public officers must choose to either become part of the legislature or the executive, not both. Attorney General, amending Article 88. Article 88 of the Constitution should be amended to separate the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice, or more specifically, the Attorney General must not be a Minister of State or a member of the government. We believe that making the Attorney General a Minister of State compromises his or her ability to fight and prosecute political corruption. The failure of the Special Prosecutor's Office and its lack of independence has been made clear to the Ghanaian electorate by now. What we need to fight political corruption effectively is the immediate establishment of the Independent Public Prosecutor's Office, separate from the Minister of Justice. This is the only way to realistically fight corruption. A truly independent Attorney General or independent public prosecutor who will have a budget sanctioned by Parliament without any ministerial interference. No amount of political spinning or propaganda can make the current office of the Special Prosecutor independent of the Attorney General and, by extension, independent of the executive. It is evident from our past experience that it will be fruitless to leave the fight against corruption in the hands of an elected government and its appointees. For this reason, the independent public prosecutor should be elected directly by the people to check the governments against political corruption. The people's prosecutor will be elected on a different electoral cycle, preferably during the midterm of an elected government. The independent public prosecutor will be given the vast prosecutorial powers with guaranteed tenure, independence, and adequate funding from Parliament to go after corrupt government officials. The government's own lawyer then will be the Minister of Justice. Public declaration of assets. Another tool in the fight against corruption is effective assets declaration regime, an effective assets declaration regime. The current process where asset declaration forms and its contents are concealed is laughable and ironic. How does one publicly declare something while concealing it at the same time? The recommendation of the Constitution Review Commission for a new assets declaration regime where the completed forms are published and can be accessed by any interested citizen for the purpose of verification is in order. The Constitution Review Commission also recommended criminal prosecution for false declaration, a duty the proposed independent public prosecutor will gladly take on board. We need to confront political corruption head-on if we want to safeguard this last attempt at constitutional democracy. Public declaration of assets should be the minimum threshold for any aspiring public office holder to meet as a condition to hold in trust massive public assets and resources of the Republic. If one cannot declare her relatively small assets to the citizens, then she has no right to take charge of huge public assets. Ghanaians in the diaspora, lastly. Ghanaian citizens are Ghanaian citizens, whether they hold dual nationality or not. In fact, their citizenship of Ghana cannot be debased by virtue of the fact that they hold dual nationality. Dual nationality is secondary to citizenship. We must introduce an amendment to the Constitution to clarify and allow Ghanaians living in the diaspora to be fully eligible to participate in the democratic process. This will ensure full citizenship rights to Ghanaians living abroad so that they can vote and serve in public sector positions. There is no justification whatsoever to deny our kith and kin such rights when they pour into our economy huge sums of foreign exchange by way of remittances to family and friends. We should be reminded that on many occasions we have sought and continue to seek the expertise of skills of Ghanaians in the diaspora in the area of sports, medicine, engineering, finance, academia, international relations, economic development, and other areas of consultancy services in different sectors of our national life. We must restore full citizenship rights to our sisters and brothers in the diaspora and clarify provisions on their qualification to become public office holders. In conclusion, it is said that every living thing must grow as it ages. Anything that ages but does not grow stagnates and dies. That is the case of our 30-year-old Constitution, which has aged but not grown. We cannot continue to apply the same principles of a fledgling democracy emerging from a military regime with near dictatorial rule to after 8 successful elections, almost 8. The massive amount of money invested in the constitutional review exercise must not be allowed to go to waste. It shall remain a scar on the conscience of right-thinking Ghanaians, like you and I, if these fundamental changes and many other brilliant recommendations contained in the CRC's report continue to gather dust. We owe it to ourselves and the next generation to secure and safeguard our democracy, and that can only be achieved through these amendments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. And already messages are coming in. And Frank Anderson Jr. sending this out of Ghana says that these presentations so far encouraging him to appreciate the need to mobilize civil society and Ghanaians in general to drive the needed change. He talks about the power and influence of such activities. Thank you so very much. Brigitte Dzogbenuku, she was the presidential candidate of the PPP in the 2020 elections. Of course, and I must make a disclosure. I voted for you because I believe that we need to trust in the third force, and more importantly also because I believe that women have what it takes to give us a certain change in the public space. Thank you very much.